A very good day to you out there, and this is another interesting edition of Business and Economy, packaged to enlightening us on the effective management of projects for Nigeria and for all Nigerians. I am Ile Emeje. Effective management of capital projects is priority for many countries of the world. This is given adequate consideration because of its advantage to strengthening the general economy by expanding the growth and development agenda of such nations. In most cases, efficient monitoring and supervision is deployed to ensuring the workings of all plans and objectives, especially on infrastructural development for the well-being of citizens. In Nigeria over the years, capital projects have not recorded full implementation due to a lot of issues. Development experts say poor management, these challenges lead to project delays, cost overruns, and incomplete projects, particularly in the construction and infrastructural sector. Furthermore, Mbadiwe is my guest, joining me after the business news to discuss on how to strengthen project management in Nigeria and the way forward. We'll be back in a moment. Equity investors from the floor of the Nigerian capital market transacted in it.
I think this first 2 years has been, in my view, sort of a ground setting event. Understanding the country, putting together policies, looking at what works, what doesn't work, making adjustments. I mean, we've seen him make adjustments in the cabinet, and there's certain conversations that there might also be further adjustments to be made. But at the end of the day, what I believe Mr. President is trying to do is to set Nigeria on a path that is self-sustaining, that would now begin, to see those dividends of these changes begin to filter down to Nigeria. It's not a very easy to do in the first 2 years. So I think, while a lot of people might think it's easy to do, if it were me, I would do this and I would do that. But I don't think it's that easy to do. I think in the first 2 years we've seen policy directions, that seem to be making positive changes to the Nigerian. So I think in general, we should continue to watch, see, and have the hope that as time goes on, Nigeria will begin to turn a tide.
A lot of people have exercised, their decision or opinion on the fact that there's this belief that before vying for the position of the presidency of a great nation like Nigeria or any nation of the world, you must have studied the environment, the country, the economy, and anything that has to do with governance. And many people are having this feeling that before you come up as the president of the country, you must have gone through the problems that the country has. And
as a project manager, and Nigeria is a project, you can do a lot of planning from outside. But until you are right inside, you would begin to see that, these plans that I've made needs to be adjusted. The whole idea of being a project manager is to be able to control the projects, which means you do a lot of planning, not even from outside. Like, for example, there's no planning that he takes to prepare. It's even more crucial than the time it takes to deliver. So while some might think, you must have known everything about this before going in, I say that's not possible. So from the moment you get in, then you begin your planning, and then as you plan and execute, you now need to control. So things are going to go in different shapes that you haven't planned for. Risks will come in, changes will come in. You have to mitigate these risks and changes as you continue to progress. It's not the easiest thing to do, and while a lot of people might think from outside that it's easy, I can tell you firsthand, even from a project management perspective, it is not easy to deliver a project where you have moving parts, moving interests, trying to harmonize all of that into getting to a good destination and a good delivery. It is not that easy, despite what anyone would say. You are supposed, and mark my words, supposed, you are supposed to make mistakes. You are supposed to make changes. You are supposed to adjust and try to adapt. It's a necessary part of project delivery. And if this country is the project and Mr. President is the project manager steering this country, believe me, there will be risks, there will be issues, and there will be changes. And those things can take time, those things can cost money, those things can cause a bit of deviation here and there. But as long as you're progressing generally towards that part of success, I would say you're okay.
Okay, this will lead us to the next question on the concerns that many Nigerians have expressed over the years, not just in this administration. Over the years, you agree with me that the implementation of capital projects have been up and down.
Yes.
I can't remember when we fully, when it was recorded that this particular year, the capital projects were fully implemented. What do you think has been the cause? What are the issues as a project manager? Thank God you refer to Nigeria as a project. Of course, Nigeria is a project.
It is.
What do you think has been the issues with the inability of government to implement?
That I'm not privy to, you know.
Okay.
So for instance, if finances is an issue, I'm not privy to, you know, how much the country has and is able to spend on capital projects. We have a budget, we have an idea of how we intend to fund this budget, but at the end of the day, other reasons for why these budgets are not fully released or why these projects are not fully signed off. Sometimes they have capital projects, and at the end of the budget year, you know, they haven't gotten, you know, possibly maybe 15% of the actual amount, or 20, or you know. So those issues I'm not privy to. But one thing I can say is this: when it comes to delivering projects successfully in Nigeria or in any country in particular, what I would say is this: projects don't deliver themselves. Human beings deliver projects. These human beings need to have the right mentality, the right methodology, the right skill sets to be able to deliver this project. Poor planning has always been the bane of virtually any project in the face of this world. Poor planning. And it's something so simple. You know, you have individuals thinking, oh, we're going to do X, and we're going to do Y, and then we're going to do Z, and then at the end of the day, we would have this. But these individuals hasn't planned this project in detail. So what you find is that the project starts, and then they're like, oh, we didn't take this into consideration. So now that stalls. Oh, we didn't take that into consideration, and that increases the costs. Okay? And before you know it, this project that we thought was going to cost us 1 million naira is now beginning to cost us 5 million naira. And then you're wondering, how come? And then I'll say, it's all down to poor planning. All right? And that is what project management is. People look at it as, you know, a certain skill set that is only meant for construction projects or some civil projects. No, project management spans across every sector of the economy. In every area of the economy, there are projects that needs to be delivered. Any country or any institution that is serious about what it's doing breaks down its strategies into projects. And it is in delivering those projects successfully do you deliver value for the people. And when we bring this down to Nigeria, Nigeria has series of projects in virtually every ministry in this country. Now, when you have inexperienced people delivering this project, this is when you begin to have problems. When you have individuals who are not qualified to deliver this project, this is when you begin to have problems. People plan on paper and they put it out so that budgets can be released. But then once that begins to come out, you now see poor delivery, and then nobody's being held accountable. When the Minister of Works came in, of course, we saw a lot of work in the very first year. He was calling a lot of contractors out. He was having meetings with them. He was trying to realign issues. My guess would be that he has done a lot of realignment now, so we might not see a lot of that. But the point is, you need to ensure. It's not about saying, I want Julius Berger to do this, I want this company to do this. A lot of other projects that are being delivered in Nigeria, not by multinational companies. And these projects are going, you know, undelivered, and nobody is taking consequences for it. So we have to understand that the professionals who deliver this project must be professionals indeed. That is why this country has decided to professionalize the field of project management. To ensure that you must be a professional in Nigeria before you lead a project. The law establishing CIPMN has made it very clear that you cannot deliver projects in Nigeria if you are not a licensed project management professional, accredited by the Chartered Institute of Project Managers of Nigeria. One might ask, why is this important? It is important because You need to ensure that you can keep track of who is doing what, and there can be consequences for failure in delivery. We need to begin to streamline the individuals who are responsible for doing this, and when they get it wrong, we need to call them. Just like you have medical doctors or you have lawyers.
Yeah.
If you mess it up, your license can be pulled. And that is a consequence. That is a consequence. CIPMN has been established by law, assented to by Mr. President, to regulate project management practices in Nigeria, to make regulations, to make laws regarding to project management practices in Nigeria, which means when there's a and of course in the first few years we had teething issues trying to kick off, but my current tenure has just started about 2 years plus ago. And in that time, one thing that myself and the council has really focused on doing is try to set up the structure within the institute, try and come up with policies and how the institute is going to carry out its operations. You see, all of this, most of the buildings you are talking about, obviously they've been built over 2 years ago anyway, over 4 years ago before the institute was established. But it doesn't still mean that we have access to all of the projects that are being delivered at the moment. But what we are trying to do now is to begin to collate that information. So we are saying the law has said that project managers on project must be licensed. So now we are beginning to go around that sensitization period. Say, look, you need to, and if this money belongs to Nigerians and you are committing them to projects, then it is responsibility of every sitting minister or every head of every parastatal in Nigeria to ensure that their organizations align with the mandate of CIPMN, to make sure that project managers are licensed and chartered, to make sure that these project managers can be tracked, and when they mess up, their licenses can be withdrawn. All right? And this goes across every sector of the economy. It is that important. But as time goes on, you would see that this sensitization effort will also move to the private sector, because we also have a mandate to make sure that we enforce the CIPMN Act on the private sector also, because the private sector delivers a lot of projects that make your life and my life easier. You know, imagine the bank messing up on a project and you're in the hospital trying to make payments for something, and then that service delivery goes down and you can't pay for crucial medical needs, and then, you know, God forbid the worst happens. All right, so private sector also are bound by the same law that the public sector also bound by, which is the Establishment Act of the Chartered Institute of Project Managers of Nigeria. Because without enforcement must go on within the public and the private sector. It is people that deliver projects, and these people must be experienced and licensed. And when these people choose to do the wrong thing, they must be held accountable for their actions, and we must stop them from continuing on that path. For now, this is sensitization, trying to get people to understand that this law exists and to align with this law. Because when the time comes, when we go past this phase and we begin to do a lot of enforcement, which we have actually started doing right now, you will begin to see that will begin to hold people in contempt, and these people, the consequences will begin to show.
When you say you are going to hold people in contempt, what will come to the minds of many Nigerians or those following the program is on the area of accountability and transparency, which has suffered in Nigeria over the years. We have people in position of, like you mentioned, ministers are to execute projects. The president is the manager, is the project manager, delegating powers and authority to other people to carry out their responsibility. But you will agree with me that over the years, I can recall in a situation where some persons were called to book or to face the law for their inability to execute projects as it were. So how will you react to this?
So now the responsibility is on both sides.
Okay.
All right. Now, when we license a project manager, we expect that project manager to have the skill sets to deliver the projects.
Okay.
All right. Now, that skill set means that we have certified that this person is good to go, which is why we cannot risk our supervising ministry, Federal Ministry of Works, Housing, Federal Ministry of Finance, other agencies and parastatals would now need to align and commit to respecting that law. Now, when they do not respect the law, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
All right, because the law that established CIPMN is the same law that established their ministries for the same country. So now they have to commit to obeying that law. Now, once they commit to obeying that law, it means that they will only have licensed professionals managing projects within their parastatals or within their ministries.
Okay.
Then we now have the responsibility of making sure that those we license are also professionals. Now, when something goes wrong, we now check. Has the ministry, departments, or agencies engaged individuals or contractors or institutions who are not licensed?
Okay.
Now, if that is the issue, then the ministry or the minister or the permanent secretary should be held responsible for breaking the law in the first place. Because nobody should be above it. Now, if at the end of the day, we find out that they have, in fact, brought in licensed professionals in accordance to the law establishing CIPMN for project managers in Nigeria, and that person has not followed the principles that CIPMN has laid down that they are meant to follow for delivering projects effectively, and has done something wrong, then the onus is now on the institute to make sure that we remove or we delicense that individual, and that responsibility now comes on us. I said it's two parts. All right. So we now say, okay, we're going to pull your license and we're going to inform, you know, all the MDAs that they cannot deal with you because you have gone against XYZ, and because of that, this project has failed and this institution is responsible. We now pull your license and we now bear that responsibility of making sure that the individuals that are licensed by CIPMN adhere to those standards. See, look, I think a lot of the times people just talk, but then after talking they don't do.
That is the problem.
You know, and I understand this fact completely. And this is why I've made it very clear to my staff. This is not a CIPMN that will just talk and not do. When we see problems, once we publish matters, it should be how we have seen it. Thank God, Ministry of Works and Housing is not giving us money. We are not going to the Minister of Trade and Investment for money. We're not begging anybody for finances. No. You know, if we are not saying, oh, it's not a matter of he who pays the piper detects the tune.
Yeah.
No. CIPMN is not supposed to receive appropriation from anywhere. Which means we are independent. We have been independently set up to regulate this sector. So we can regulate it. And we can say, no, you've gotten it wrong. Very soon we're going to publish a report. And in that report, we're going to be looking at different projects that are failed in Nigeria. And we're going to be calling out the ministries, we're going to be calling out departments and the agencies. We're going to be looking at the reasons why these projects have failed. And I can assure you, many of them will be project managers who are not licensed or institutions who are not licensed to deliver projects in Nigeria. In fact, the law establishing CIPMN has made it clear that even if you are a foreign national who is in Nigeria looking to deliver projects in this country, you must be licensed by the Chartered Institute of Project Managers of Nigeria. It's the law. You have to be. Because we need to know who you are and what you are doing. And if you mess up, we need to be able to punish you for that. And if you don't follow the standards, so it's not even about what, you know, your employer wants. As a professional, you must do what's right. We must see your plans. We must see how you've been able to mitigate for risks. We must see how you've been able to manage changes. We must see how you've been able to document, you know, this project. And we must see the steps you've taken to raise alarms if something starts progressing in the wrong way. You can't just waste people's money, make people's lives difficult, and there's no consequence to you. No, it's not possible.
Okay. In Nigeria, we have all witnessed the fact that most of the time, good, robust policies are rolled out, but when it comes to implementation and enforcement, to taking action against those that are unable or inability to carry out the objectives as they were has been the problem. How prepared are you to achieve this objective, given the fact and the issues we have around sentiments, nepotism, religiosity, and all the issues that have divided some Nigerians?
Yes, I understand.
How are you going to realize all of this if you consider them or you put them? What institutional framework have you put in place to ensuring that all this does not come to play?
It's a very difficult thing to do. I'm not even going to say it's not. It is, you know. And I'll tell you something. When I first came into Nigeria to take up this position, you know, some people thought, oh, this guy has lived and worked in the UK and coming to Nigeria, he doesn't understand Nigeria, he's just going to mess up. And somebody used the word, He said, there was a very difficult situation I had to face. Somebody said, oh, you know, Nigeria must have happened to Henry. And I was a bit, I was like, what do you mean Nigeria happened? So basically the person was trying to say that, you know, I was going to meet some kind of a very difficult situation, and then that situation was going to destroy me, you know, and I can understand where they're coming from. You know, you're working in a place where I'm speaking to a chief executive or speaking to, you know, some, you know, contractor, and then they're saying, oh, somebody's doing the wrong thing, and then you're telling them this is wrong, and then they just pick up the phone and call somebody, and somebody from high up says, no, let them do that thing, you know. So, and then what do you have to do about it? I know Nigeria has these issues, but you see, one of the problems I've also noticed is that Nigeria, a lot of institutions are highly centralized. What I want to stop CIPMN from getting into is being highly centralized. I want to create policies that will stand on their own. An institution that survives after Henry is gone somewhere else. An institution that will survive after any of my deputy registrars or anybody in the council has moved on to other opportunities. You have to create a framework that is nameless and faceless. Make that digital. You see, when somebody calls me and says, oh, Henry, I've just heard that you're about to blacklist XYZ, one of my contractors. You must not do that because you know, I'm going to make sure your agency gets into a difficult situation, or we're going to help you with funding, we're going to do this, so you have to do. Now, I agree, but what I'm trying to create is a situation that is driven by technology. Okay. So that at that point, even I would not be able to do anything. And I started out with our licensing process. Our licensing process forces you to take an exam. And forces you, the process you take in registering for that exam means that you cannot escape it, because the digital accesses and digital footprint it leaves behind, I can't even fake it even if I want to. I can slot in somebody within CIPMN using technology to ensure that I cannot even manipulate it. So I tie my own hands. And the same thing goes for everybody within the institution. And you see that a technology-driven policy or centered policy ensures that no one person can manipulate the system.
Okay, no one person can manipulate the system. And to take me to this question, we have recorded in the past where some foreigners will come to Nigeria to do and undo because of the powers that be, maybe the backing from the powers that be. So how are they cooperating with your ethics, especially when it has to do with registration, getting them to register with you before carrying out any project in Nigeria?
Many people won't care. Let me just say that. A lot of foreign nationals won't care. Some of them have been delivering projects for years, and people have said, oh, you know, we've been delivering projects for a long time. You guys just came up 2 years ago. You know, is it that we don't know what we're doing? Why do we have to be regulated by you? But unfortunately, that's the law. That it started 2 years ago doesn't mean that they shouldn't really do their job.
It should be done.
All right? You should really make sure that you come register with this institution and then begin to make sure that the way you operate, we can see who is doing what. All right? Now, it's a very, again, I do not take away the difficulties of doing this in this country. But I have to make sure that my word are not just words that will be spoken and there will be no actions behind it. It's as simple as this. Foreign nationals who are in Nigeria delivering projects, it doesn't matter who brought you or where you came from. There is a law that everybody in Nigeria must adhere to, and that is that you must register and get licensed by CIPMN, which means we must be sure that the things you deliver follow proper project management practices. Okay. And if you get that wrong, we will tell Nigerians that you've gotten it wrong. We will go to the courts and we will use the courts also. We will enforce our law using the courts and the law enforcement agencies in Nigeria, because you've broken the law. The law actually says that if you practice project management in Nigeria without being licensed, you have committed an offense. You've broken, and there are consequences for that offense in our act. So a judge does not have to think twice. Is this what the act says? Yes. Is it a law in Nigeria? Yes. Do you have it? No. It's very simple. It doesn't require conversation or arguments. Okay. So we would call you out. We would use the courts. We will go after that institution. Oh yes, if anybody in Nigeria says that, oh, we have gotten Henry, we have given the CIPMN some money and we can get everything, it's not possible. Come and tell us today. Because I will not collect, and I will make sure that I continue to pursue these individuals that want to break the law in Nigeria, that think that the money you give to them to deliver project is for them to use the way that they want to. We're going to come after them. I'm going to let Nigerians know about the institutions and these people. We're publishing a list this year. And once we publish that list, we're going to make sure that everybody sees that list. We're going to call out these companies. And if there are projects under any ministry, we're going to call out those projects. Okay. And those ministries that those projects are under would also be mentioned. Enough is enough where we think that we can just, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It matters.
I think it matters. A welcome development.
It matters because it's not something wrong. It's not bad. It is for the business. This is what foreign all these countries we go to and enjoy ourselves. You see, people, they live in Nigeria, you face difficulties here, then you travel abroad, you enjoy all the beauties there. Yeah. And then you come back here and you want us to keep suffering. You know, one of the reasons why I was very keen on coming back to Nigeria is because I cannot sit back, you know, delivering multinational projects, you know, or multi-million-pound projects for multinational companies, you know, in the UK, in the US, and then in Nigeria we're here struggling. These principles and these processes are put together by human beings over there. So most of them by us. So we need to come back to our country and put these things in place. And it is not wrong that we want these things to go well.
It is not wrong.
It is not wrong.
It is not.
You know, so everybody should really come on board and let's ensure that we do things right. How can that be a difficult thing to us?
As easy as just about our mindset, so to say. And again, Mr. Henry, there are cases where projects that's supposed to be given and handled successfully by indigenous engineers are given to foreigners.
President has sort of already started dealing with this already in the most recent act of declaration that he made. You know, and I think he has instructed the BPP that you cannot you cannot procure any projects anymore from overseas. It must be Nigeria first. You know, I think that's a very good policy. But let's also be clear about something.
That
the Nigerian mentality is a problem. It's not across the entire country, but I've experienced it in certain places. Professionalism is something we should really take seriously. Right? And a lot of your indigenous companies in Nigeria should aim to be more professional. Skilled,
kind of.
Yes. You know, the artisans in Nigeria should aim to be more skilled. All right? You have artisans in Nigeria that are not skilled. People that don't care. I've seen it. You know, I have lived in the United Kingdom and you call somebody to come and do some plumbing work for you and the person charges you £50 an hour, you know, £100 for 2-hour work, which is about 200,000 now, for something that he would do in the next maybe an hour or two. But the way that work would be done, the amount of things a carpenter brings to come and fix the doorknob in my house, I'm thinking, really? He would remove this, remove that, he will make this, he will clean that up again, he will even clean up the handles properly, he will do this and he will screw that. He has the right tool, and by the time he's done, I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. You call a carpenter in Nigeria to do the same, he just comes with a hammer. Probably doesn't even have nails. You know, he tells you, oh, Oga, let me go and buy nail. And then he brings some nail and bam, 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 and he goes, oh no, this nail is not the right one, it's a bigger one I need. And then he yanks it out, and then he goes, so you see, at the end of the day, you tell me we need to get indigenous companies, which I agree, but we need to begin to ramp up the skill set in those companies. We need to ramp up the mindset in this. The president is trying to do a good thing, all right? But we must begin to ramp up this skill set. And do you know who is responsible? The organizations that are employing these individuals. I've worked for companies where I do trainings over and over again. You see people working for a particular institution, and they don't even really do any serious training. People do trainings as if it's an event to announce. You know, oh, so-and-so agency is doing a 3-day course on blah, blah, blah. Why is it an event to announce? Why? You know, these are things you should have processes that take people through trainings every single time. To be honest, I'm getting frustrated.
Training and retraining.
And retraining, yes, I'm getting frustrated when people come together to launch a road. And like, oh, don't start roads in the night, and by the morning it's done and it's open. I don't even see the local MP coming to make noise about it. we need to do better. We need to do better. We need to upskill local individuals. We need to understand that it is your works that will speak for you. All right?
Yeah.
And we need to, and that's why I said in the beginning, it is people that do this.
Yeah.
So we need human capital development is important.
Yeah.
This is where CIPMN sits. We need to train up artisans. We need to train up individuals to have the skill sets that it takes to deliver an international work.
But do CIPMN, do they train people, artisans, engineers? Do you have provision
yes,
for
so
such?
our act stops at the point.
Regulation?
No, not just regulation, supervision, training, all right? But in project management, I will not train you how to be a carpenter, all right? Okay. So we're training you how to manage your work, how to plan your work. Now, what we need to now do is to collaborate with that agency to bring in the project management ideas and methodologies in the way that carpenter works, while we support them in thinking of the best way to enrich that person's specific skill as an electrician or as a carpenter or whatnot.
Okay.
But you find that on a larger scale, one of the reasons why projects fail is because the proper planning that should be done is not there. So I want to know, what are this level of the skill level we need to deliver this thing within 3 days? So we come up and we say, we want to deliver this in a month. Fine. But at what skill level should those engineers have? At what skill that Nigeria has spent almost $4 billion in corrective works on projects? Corrective works. We have to save that money.
Right.
Perhaps project management can do that. Let's work with CIPMN and let's ensure that we